Much of the U.S. is in a heat wave this week, and there could be serious ramifications for air travelers. Here to explain more is Suzanne Kelleher, one of my colleagues here at Forbes. She's a staff writer who covers travel and trends and news for us. Suzanne, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So you have a story. I love this headline. I love it as a reader. I dislike it as a traveler. Why this week could be hell for air travelers. So let's just start with the obvious why. Why is this week going to be so bad for air travel?
Well, weather patterns can wreak just chaos with the air travel system in the United States. So this week we have a heat dome over much of the Midwest and the Northeast, triple digit temperatures, and what that does is it makes it harder for planes to take off because the air molecules are less dense. It takes the plane more energy to actually get the thrust. So what ends up happening is that in areas where there might be something like a shorter runway or a mountain or maybe a runway that takes up over the ocean, they might not have enough room. So that can lead to delays, and it can lead to airlines having to bump passengers off of flights to get the weight down off planes.
Okay, I want to break this down because I am not a scientist, and you did have a source who told you that with extreme heat, the runway effectively becomes too short. So just to make sure we're all super clear on that, it's basically Go ahead.
It's not everywhere. It's in places like he used the example of Phoenix, right? So Phoenix, obviously in Arizona, gets super hot. It's surrounded by mountains. So you can't just lengthen a runway. And if it gets to a certain temperature, and every plane make and model is different, every runway is a different length. There's no kind of standard runway length. So in some parts of the country, what ends up happening is it's too hot for the planes to actually take off. They don't have enough runway. That's kind of the extreme, but it's much more common that they just say, well, we just need to reduce our payload. We need to either get rid of passengers. That means, they offer to bump. They might give you a credit and they say, we need, volunteers, 10 passengers to get off the plane with their bags. But that delays flights too, right? So the major problem that potentially travelers will encounter are delays. It just is something that they have to kind of wiggle around a little bit more. And then the second issue is that when you have a very hot day and you have delays, there's a bigger chance that you'll end up with your plane stuck on the tarmac for hopefully not very long while you're waiting to go out and take off. But sometimes delays cause these traffic jams, and you have a plane on the tarmac, sometimes for an hour, sometimes 2 hours. At 3 hours, they need to let you off because there's no air conditioning. There's no way of getting air into the plane. So that can be quite uncomfortable too if that happens.
I've been there, although not for 3 hours. And I think the record, or at least a record, was last year a plane sat for 7 hours at Newark. Is that correct?
Right. And that was extreme. But the same month, last July, that was a United flight at Newark. There was a Delta flight at Las Vegas at 111 degrees, sat for 4 hours. People were vomiting. People were passing out. 2 people went to the hospital. So, I mean, these are extremes. I fingers crossed that's not going to happen during this week. But it is, it's just an uncomfortable, it can be uncomfortable, even if you're there an hour or 45 minutes waiting to take off with no air conditioning. Planes don't have the way that planes cool off, their cooling system, they need to be in the air. And so, when you're boarding the plane and you're still connected to the gate, they have a tube that goes into the plane, blowing cold air in. It's all very comfortable. Once they detach from that tube, there's no way for a plane to cool itself down until it gets in the air. Obviously, once it's at 40,000 feet, the air temperature outside, it's still bringing in air from outside. That's how it works, and the air temperature is sub-zero at that point. So then it's a matter of heating up the air to make it comfortable. But while they're either taxiing on the runway or once you land, sometimes too, you have the same thing. I've had this happen. I'm sure everybody's had it happen where your plane lands and then you wait. And if the temperatures are super hot, that can get uncomfortable.